Hi, my name is Madi Kuban, and today I'm reviewing the book The Importance of Being Little by Erica Christakis. Throughout this book, Erica describes the disconnect that children have in the classroom. And what I mean by the disconnect is children have needs when it comes to thriving in the classroom. And there's a huge disconnect between their needs and what they're provided in today's modern day preschool or kindergarten classroom. So how will children thrive? They best learn through play, their imagination, firsthand experiences, how creative they are with art or storytelling, writing, how they explore with playing and explore with their peers, as well as meaningful conversations with trusted adults and their friends. So what are preschool and kindergarten programs actually doing? Well, they prioritize strict, rigid schedules. Yes, children need routine, and it's good to have some form of structure in order to make sure that we are maintaining productive in the classroom. However, the routine that they're following is very rigid and not flexible, and it doesn't allow them to be free in making their own decisions at times. Classroom settings often provide worksheets, but they don't provide opportunities to retain the information on the worksheets. So yes, children are learning how to read and write, but not necessarily what each word means or not necessarily understanding the point of each activity on the worksheet. Each kid is put under a lot of pressure to succeed in the classroom, and the reason why this is a problem is because each child learns and develops at different rates. And we'll talk about this a little further on in the presentation, but Christakis talks about how preschool classrooms and programs are putting children under a one-size-fits-all template, when we really should be looking at them as unique individual children who have different needs that need to be met. And lastly, we're overcrowding our classrooms, which also hinders the unique individuality of the children. So how is this a problem? Erica argues that children learning in these modern-day school environments are missing key components of learning, and that is very important during this developmental stage. Children at this age are expected to adapt to a much more advanced learning environment, and that disrupts their developmental process. Now, like I mentioned prior, these children are not getting everything that they need in the classroom. So what are some things that children need versus what they are given? So children at this age need time, they need space for their own individual growth, interpersonal relationships, conversations with multiple people at different ages, undisrupted playtime, tools to drive curiosity and exploration, and adults who allow for a safe space for listening and understanding. These are factors in a learning environment that will help a child flourish. However, they are not provided these things in more modern day preschool environments, according to Christakis. Because these factors don't resemble a typical school setting, they aren't prioritized and often neglected or not accounted for. Because of the gaps in the needs of children and what they're actually being provided, Erica's intentions for the book is to explain how children will productively learn during this stage of their life, and points out ways our system does not fulfill these needs for our children, as well as how we can support our children in these environments by prioritizing relationships, trust, play, and happiness. So chapter 1 is called Little Learners, a Classroom Called Childhood. And Christakis starts off this chapter by telling a story of an interaction she has with a girl named Abby. And Abby, in this story, shows a deep knowledge and understanding of the conversation she's having with Erica. And Erica remembers being so impressed and shocked at how intellectual Abby was at just being 5 years old. Further pointing out that children are able to understand and attain complex topics even at young ages. Now, she criticizes preschools, arguing that they prioritize worksheets and sit-down activities instead of playtime, exploration, and imagination. And the problem with this is we aren't providing children an outlet of growth that promotes intelligence further down the road. And playtime, exploring different relationships and situations, and providing outlets of imagination are what's going to give people or children that growth for intelligence. And the main message she has for this chapter is that they grow best, meaning children grow best in an environment that promotes exploration of their own natural curiosity and intelligence. If they're forced to kind of look through this lens that they're not necessarily understanding of, they won't fully understand or relate to the messages that are being taught in the classroom. If children are encouraged to have their own individual, unique outlook on different things, and that comes from firsthand experience, then they will learn how to interact with people and how to talk to people. And that they cannot get with a rigid schedule or curriculum in the classroom. Chapter 2 goes into the topic of the learning environment and how today's preschool environment is trying to fit each child into a one-size-fits-all template instead of looking at their true, unique, individual selves. It's generalizing each child and not necessarily looking at their individual needs. Erica argues that opportunities for play and exploration promotes learning that will better prepare them for more advanced learning environment once they are developmentally ready for one. She criticizes preschools, saying they're overstimulating children by overscheduling them, making their everyday activities too rigid, and weaken their ability for independence in a learning environment. The main message she spreads in this chapter is children at this stage need space to explore at their own pace, and they need that through self-guided play and interaction with others. Forcing them to be very strict and rigid in their structure at an age where too much structure can hinder their development does not allow them to flourish in the classroom. Chapter 3, which is The Natural Born Artist, The Creative Powers of Childhood, talks about the importance of artistic ability in children, and not necessarily how good they are at making art, but having the liberty of drawing, painting, and reflecting on what they make and create without the pressure of making the perfect looking art piece. Providing materials for children and allowing them to independently create will provide them a better learning experience and allow them to reflect on what got them to make the piece that they did. So Erica criticizes preschools, saying that they're focused more on the end goal instead of focusing on the process of what the child is creating. And it puts pressure on the kids to make something that everybody will like instead of focusing on what they like and what makes them happy. And so the main message of this chapter is prioritizing the process of creation rather than focusing/caring too much about the end product. The most important modes of education come from their own internal creativity and the journey of getting to the end product rather than what the end product actually is. Chapter 4 looks at the search for intelligent life, which is unstandard learning. And Erica goes on to talk about how children are capable of high levels of intellectual ability when they're in an unstructured learning environment. Now, most people nowadays might think that's a crazy statement, but from what we've learned from the few chapters prior to this one, children need that developmental stage of independence and exploration and self-identity discovery in order for them to have a sense of personality and identity entering the classroom and learning all of these subjects for the first time. They best learn through their own modes of curiosity and will have a better understanding of different topics when they have a sense of motivation and desire to learn about them. Yes, we're going to have times where children aren't going to be as interested in math or not as interested in history, and that's normal. We're not forcing them to be interested in everything. However, it's important that we allow them to establish a sense of curiosity in these topics because their own motivation will drive them to learn about these to the fullest extent. Erica criticizes preschools for pushing an academic readiness, which is hindering a child's true ability to learn. Intellectual ability tends to flourish when a child is able to process and explore at their own pace, which preschools are hindering by pushing this academic curriculum. So she encourages this message by saying, intelligence in children can be cultivated by allowing exploration in the classroom instead of placing academic pressure and expectations at these ages. In Chapter 5, Erica talks about how this stage of childhood is generalized instead of made a priority, and that this stage is the most important for productive development in all aspects for children, and this should be protected in the classroom. And the biggest issue in preschools is that some children are overdiagnosed with hyperactivity or learning disabilities, which can limit the way that they learn and grow. Her main message at this chapter is looking at this stage as an opportunity to point out the developmental problems in children are hindering the way that they grow naturally. It's important to remember that this stage is the most important for overall development and should not be seen as an outlet to fix something that is not broken. Chapter 6 focuses on the extinction of play. Now, the chapter overview talks about free play and how it has been slowly removed from preschools and replaced with more academic-based lessons and worksheets. Now, playtime is crucial for children, specifically with their development, and this means their social skills, interacting with their classmates, freely opening up their imagination while they're playing with their classmates, being able to learn and process their emotions and the emotions of other children, being able to interact and cooperate with their peers, as well as learning how to solve their own problems. This is not taught in a classroom setting. This is only taught through firsthand experience. She criticizes preschools, saying we're stripping children of a very important outlet of exploration and an opportunity for independence. The main message of this chapter is forcing rigid environments is causing children to be delayed developmentally on a social standard. We should encourage children to play and explore without heavy supervision, embrace the mess that comes with this exploration, and allow for freedom within their own world of creativity. This will allow children to learn from their mistakes, learn from their peers, and learn from the activities that they're doing outside of the classroom. In Chapter 7, Erica looks at the material world and how that could be hindering the growth of children. So, children tend to be more engaged with creativity and interact better with their peers when they have less toys to work with. Now, what does this mean? Children with an overabundance of toys don't necessarily have that appreciation for every toy that they have. And they often forget that they have some toys that they've had for a long, long time, just because they're constantly on a rotating cycle of toys. The less is more attitude works because it's in the sense that children will be encouraged to deepen their creativity and imagination when they have less toys to work with. Now, Erica criticizes preschools, saying that consumerism, specifically in the classroom, is plaguing the way children creatively play because they're not focused on the experience they have with the individual toy. Rather, they're concerned more by how many toys that they have and what toys that they don't have. So Erica wants to simplify the environments of these children. Having a lot of toys to work with is not giving them an opportunity to fully explore what's right in front of them. Chapter 8 focuses on the emotional needs of children, specifically when it comes to fear, fantasy, and emotional appetite. So the chapter talks about how children may seem overly emotional, especially because they don't know how to regulate their emotions at this age, which is normal. That is typical for children, and that's how they are starting to get into the process of learning how to regulate their emotions. This is often labeled as acting out. So instead of looking at it as an opportunity to learn about their emotions, we're often looking at children in a way that they are not acting in the right expectations and often shamed for having these emotions because the level of intensity is so high when they're experiencing these emotions. Not being aware of this and ignoring these emotions will jeopardize how they grow emotionally and understanding what each emotion means for them. So like I said, shaming them for having these high levels of emotions will make them feel like they can't have a sense of anger, a sense of discomfort, a sense of anxiety and fear, because we're shaming them for having these high levels of emotions when acting out. So she criticizes preschools, saying that we aren't setting up the school environment to properly aid children in ways that they can regulate and process their emotions. And what she means by that is because we're overpopulating classrooms, we aren't giving teachers and caretakers the opportunity to individually work out emotions with children because they're having to work with many, many children. Children's emotional needs are often ignored to maintain a stable learning environment because there is such a big group of kids in the classroom. Erica wants us to make sure that the emotional needs of children are met because it's imperative for their overall growth. Ignoring these opportunities for children to learn about their individual emotions and what each emotion means in light of the situation that they're in won't help them learn those emotions either. And it often isolates them socially and internally. Chapter 9 focuses on language development in children, specifically when it comes to social interaction and how that plays a huge role in the development of language in children. Providing opportunities for storytelling with their peers or with their teachers, in-depth conversations with other people, and creative writing promote fulfilling opportunities for growth within a child's language development. The problem is the curriculum in preschools is structured in a way that provides lists, charts, and activities that encourage memory instead of learning how to properly communicate through firsthand experience. So Erica urges us to explore interactive opportunities to allow for learning from mistakes, because this will provide the best outlet for language development. Aiding the learning process too much can hinder the way a child thinks. So being too structured, like I said before, can jeopardize the way a child learns and the way the child processes information. We best learn from making mistakes. And as silly as that sounds, it's true. We learn from firsthand experience the best because we refer back to memory of when we made a mistake or when something worked out in our favor. This is how children are going to learn, and this is how they will start to have that learning and language development in the classrooms as well. Because if we're aiding the process too much, it can hinder the way that they think, and it can cause them to be overly critical of the way they talk and interact with other people as well. Chapter 10 looks at human connection, specifically referring to the relationship a child has with their parent or teacher. It's super important for a unique understanding of connection for each individual child because it's different for each individual child. Meaningful experiences for children in school mean that children are able to depend on their caretaker or teacher in ways that they will fully listen to them when they talk to them, respond to them with meaningful responses, which allows trust for the child with their teacher. Having a positive relationship with their teacher will promote confidence in themselves and a sense of motivation to learn. However, Erica points out that oftentimes adults hinder this development because of their own fears. They're often pushing rigidity rather than letting the child control their own pace of growth. So she messages in this chapter saying that children need someone who is caring, encouraging, and is willing to listen to them in order to establish a solid foundation of trust, respect, and empathy with others. And the last chapter talks about early learning and the American dream. So Erica talks about how today's society has treated early childhood as a stepping stone to a child's future, instead of prioritizing living in the moment and the importance of that particular stage of life. Having a mindset like this is preventing preschools from providing what a child actually needs. They need their independence in making decisions. They need an outlet for creativity and exploration. And this all comes from learning from firsthand experiences. Erica also urges us adults to format early childhood education in ways that explores the uniqueness of each individual child, instead of forcing a child to fit into a generalized template. It's not productive for each child to go based off of another child. We have to approach each child in the classroom as their own individual self, and that's how we approach our clients as well. The main message of this chapter is valuing the stage of early childhood will provide children a path to success. that they won't get if they follow a rigid academic schedule they aren't ready for. Replacing exploration, creativity, and firsthand experience with unrealistic classroom expectations is hindering their growth and not providing a environment that will make them the most successful kid that they could possibly be. Now, based on all of this information and the points that Christakis made in her book, I'm curious to see your point of view on the rigidity of preschools in today's day and age, and if you agree with Christakis or not on whether we should incorporate more playful, liberated preschool environments rather than a more rigid academic environment for preschoolers. What activities do you think would be most beneficial for children at that age that could incorporate both an academic workspace and a liberated free play space?